the man nobody wanted. The train screeched to a halt at the dusty platform of Maple Hollow, a forgotten little town on the edge of nowhere. Smoke billowed from its iron lungs as the doors clanged open. Passengers bustled off, dusting their hats and coats, carrying parcels and expectations. Among them stood a man no one noticed. He was tall but slender, so slim the wind might carry him off if he didn't plant his boots just right. His name was Elias Carr. In one hand he carried a leather suitcase, worn and patched, the handle wrapped with frayed twine, and in the other, a photograph of a woman with a kind face and 4 children. Elias had traveled halfway across the country to marry her. Her name was Beatrice Langley, a widow of 3 years who had posted an advertisement for a husband in the back of a homemaker's gazette. She wasn't looking for love, just a man who wouldn't drink himself stupid, would help with the chores, and wouldn't scare her children. Elias had written back with a gentle tone, modest grammar, and a promise. "I won't make your life harder." When she'd agreed and sent for him, he thought maybe, just maybe, this time things would be different. But fate, as always, had other plans. Beatrice was waiting at the station with her oldest daughter, 10-year-old Ruthie, and a skeptical scowl. When Elias stepped off the train, her smile faltered. He tipped his hat, his lips stretching into a hopeful grin. "You're Elias?" she asked flatly. "I am," he replied, heart quickening. "And you must be. You're skinnier than I thought." It wasn't said with malice, just plain surprise. But those words carried the weight of 1,000 rejections. Elias's grip tightened around the suitcase. Beatrice looked him over, his hollow cheeks, the sunken collarbone, the thin wrists poking out from his sleeves. "I was expecting someone sturdier," she added, not unkindly, but with a trace of disappointment. "My boys chop wood. The horses buck when they're cross. I can't have a man the wind might blow over." Ruthie peered from behind her mother, her big brown eyes curious but cautious. Elias looked into them and smiled softly. "I may not look like much," he said, "but I'm stronger than I seem. I don't complain, and I'll earn my keep." But Beatrice shook her head. "I'm sorry," she said. "I need someone who can carry the weight. I can't afford to gamble on a dreamer." With that, she turned. Ruthie lingered for a moment, staring back at Elias, then followed her mother into the dusty street. And just like that, Elias was alone again, the widow who saw his worth. The sun crept slowly over the hills, casting long golden streaks across the sleepy town of Maple Hollow. Elias Carr sat quietly on the wooden steps of the old church, his suitcase at his side, his shoulders slightly hunched, and his eyes scanning the dusty street as though still waiting for someone to call out and say, "Wait, I've changed my mind." But no such voice came. He had spent the night at the livery stable, curled beside the furnace, trying to sleep with the echo of Beatrice Langley's polite rejection ringing in his ears. Too skinny, not strong enough, not what she imagined. Those words didn't surprise him, not really. He had lived a life filled with them. A man who couldn't fight in the war, who couldn't hold a job during drought years, who wrote letters instead of shouting in saloons. People didn't see value in a man like Elias. But just as he rose to his feet, preparing to wander on, a voice broke the silence. "You still waiting for someone, mister?" Elias turned to see a woman in a faded blue dress, boots scuffed from years of wear, and a basket of eggs hanging from her arm. She had chestnut brown hair twisted into a hurried bun, and eyes that seemed to measure him without judgment. "No, ma'am," he said, "just figuring where to go next. I saw you get off the train yesterday." Beatrice Langley sent for a man. "Guessing that was you." Elias nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "She said I wasn't what she expected." The woman gave a knowing hum. "You eat breakfast?" "I haven't yet." "Well, I have eggs and half a loaf of cornbread that won't last another day. You're welcome to share it. I'm Cora Jennings." He blinked. "Elias Carr." She looked him over. "You any good with a hammer?" "I get by. Roof's been leaking since March. Dog won't stop barking at the wind. And my goat thinks she owns the house. I could use another pair of hands." Elias smiled softly. "I'm not strong, but I work hard. And I don't take much room." Cora smiled back. "Well then, I suppose we've got a deal." Cora's farm was small, just 2 acres, an old barn with a slanted roof, 3 hens, 1 goat named Dolly, and a dog named Patch with a limp and an attitude. But the place had soul. It wasn't much, but it was more than Elias had seen in years. He started with the roof. The beams were rotting, but with scavenged wood and a little ingenuity, he made them hold. Then came the fencing. He fixed the loose boards, dug new posts, and chased Dolly back in her pen no less than 6 times before finally outsmarting her with a makeshift gate latch. Cora watched him with quiet amusement. "You sure you've never done farm work before?" she asked one evening as they shelled peas on the porch. "I've done a bit of everything," he replied. "Never stayed in one place long enough to get good at anything." She tilted her head. "Maybe that's because you hadn't found the right place." He didn't answer, but something in his chest stirred. Weeks passed. Summer gave way to autumn, and the leaves painted the hills in hues of orange and red. The townsfolk began to notice the changes: the clean barn, the new woodpile, the laughter that sometimes echoed from Cora's porch. Some still whispered, "That's the one Beatrice rejected." Others said, "He's nothing but a stray dog she took in." But Cora paid them no mind. She'd known judgment all her life, for being poor, for marrying young, for losing her husband to illness. Now she saw a man who rose before dawn, who fixed what others ignored, and who smiled like he still believed the world had good in it. One evening, as they watched the first frost creep over the grass, Cora turned to him. "Elias, why did you answer Beatrice's letter?" He thought a moment before answering. "I wanted to matter to someone. I wasn't looking for love, just a place where I wasn't a burden." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "You're not a burden here. You've never been." It happened quietly, without ceremony. One morning, Cora handed him an old, crumpled envelope, the same one he had carried on the train, with the photograph of Beatrice and her children inside. He stared at it, then at her. "You still holding on to that dream?" she asked gently. Elias hesitated. "I thought I'd burned it." Cora smiled. "Dreams don't burn so easy." He folded the photo and put it away. "I found a better one." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple gold band, her late husband's, worn smooth with time. She offered it to him. "If you want, you can stay, not just as a helper, not as a stranger, as my husband." Elias stared at her, stunned. "You'd marry me? I already trust you with my home. I'd be proud to trust you with my heart." His hands trembled as he slid the ring onto his finger. They married under the same church steeple where Elias had once sat in silence. No grand celebration, no fancy cake. Just 2 neighbors as witnesses, a borrowed Bible, and a promise made in earnest. The town gossiped again, of course. "She married him," they said. But those who visited the Jennings farm saw the truth. A home filled with laughter, a dog who finally stopped barking, and a man who'd found not just a roof, but a reason to stay. Years later, people would tell the story of the mail-order husband who was rejected for being too skinny, how he'd come to Maple Hollow with nothing but a suitcase and hope, how he'd been turned away by one widow but embraced by another, and how, against all odds, he'd built a life not of muscle or might, but of quiet strength, devotion, and love.